everybody. My name is Diana, and I'm your Students' Union President. And this is Jo.
I'm Jo. I'm your VP Community.
And tonight we're so lucky to be joined by some incredible sabbs from the past. We've got AJ, last year's Students' Union President. We've got Misty, what year's Students' Union President?
2015.
2015. We've got Munya, who's 2015-16's VP Voice. And we've got Nat, who is... What year? Last year's VP.
Yeah, last year.
So we're so lucky to have you guys as old sabbs come back and give us some of your wisdom. That is lovely. But yeah, so we'll start it off with the first question for you guys is what actually inspired you to run for election? So anyone who wants to go first? Misty, you're going to go first because you're making a face.
Okay. Oh, what inspired me to run for election? Truthfully, I had no intention of running to be in the Students' Union at all. I did have every intention to be ACS president. I decided I was going to be ACS president before I'd gone to uni. And I did that. And the person that had the VP role before me at the time he was going to run for president, Maz. And he said to me, "You did a great job as ACS president. I think you should run for vice president of what is now activities, but back then was vice president societies." And I was like, I don't really feel like I want to do it. This has come very last minute. I'm kind of ready to graduate. And I had a conversation with Munya on the very, very last day of nominations. We're talking, nominations closed at like 12. And I was talking to Munya at 10 a.m. And Munya was just like, "Bro, just run. Like, I'm going to do it. I'll do it if you do it." And I was like, all right, fine. If you're going to do it, I'll do it. Let's go. And at the time, he was running for VP Welfare, which is now VP Support. And I just submitted my nomination very last minute. Had 24 hours to come up with a manifesto. Didn't even know what that was. I spent all night in the library instead of working on my assignments, writing up a manifesto, trying to figure out how to edit it on some crap online software.
Paid back in the day.
Yeah, well, yeah. And just submitted it and had to start a campaign team from scratch.
So would you have to say that, like, you give big thanks to Munya?
Well.
Come on.
I don't know if I'd go as far as that, It's Munya, after all. But, no, like, it was great to know that I would be running with someone I knew, a fellow friend. But it was also great to be recognized for what I did in ACS, to be able to say, you should run for a vice president position. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Munya, would you like to follow?
There wasn't any one thing that made me decide for being a sub. I think from the first, so when I arrived at Surrey as a mature student, so I arrived at 21, and my friend Bakita Casada, who was very heavily involved in the union, was kind of the main reason I came, because I knew I'd have like a good support network there through her, and she was heavily involved in the union. She kind of encouraged me to run for equality and diversity in my first year, and then from the first year until I left, I was always a part of the union. And I saw the value that it gives to students in terms of helping improve the student experience, but also just sculpting and cultivating what your experience is at university. And sometimes you don't even know that the union's influencing your experience because you're not aware of the work that they do. And being a union officer for so long, either as part-time or full-time, I got to see it firsthand behind the scenes. So when I saw like the passion and drive and just like the sheer kind of like concern or awareness for the student experience, I thought this is the environment I want to be a part of. So I kind of naturally just went that way. So I was a part-time officer twice and then went to I was part-time officer once, ran for president, lost, then ran for welfare. So I was always destined to be a sab, I think. It was just my future.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I love that you ran for something, lost, and then came back, which brings me to AJ.
Personally, for me, why did I run? I was ACS president as well, and I think let me get this closer. Hold on. I was ACS president as well, and I think as president, when nominations comes around, people are like, "Oh, you should run for da-da-da-da, you should run for da-da-da-da." But a part of me, I was like, "Nah, I don't care. Like, ACS is fun, but ACS is hard." So I was like, I wouldn't mind the change, like, in terms of being able to make an impact, but personally, I wasn't interested until the last day when I got more recommendations. So then I spoke to a previous VP, Koyin, and I was like, I've got this thing, recommendations come through, should I run? She's like, yeah, you can do it if you want. At that point, I didn't even know what the zone positions really were. I just did it on a whim. So I read it and I was like, I think voice zone seems cool. So then I ran for the voice and here I am now, essentially. Don't regret it because I've stayed in the union for many years and it's definitely a good experience for me.
So, like, one big question that I've always wanted to ask you was, how come you ran again after you lost?
Because when I lost, truthfully, the thing with me is I know, not that I know it's not God, but I have intuition and I believe in myself. So before I'd lost, I was like, Diana, I've lost. And she was like, you don't know. I was like, I promise you, something in me is telling me I've lost president. And then when I got the results, I was like, it's fine. But it wasn't a thing whereby I lost by like loads of votes. It was less than 100 votes. It was like 50 odd votes. So I was like, it's not even something whereby I lost because I wasn't good enough. I think at the time there were I'm not getting into it, but there were certain factors that contributed to the loss. And I think I came back to prove to myself and my community that, listen, Black voices, we matter, representation matters. And that's personally why I ran again for president.
Thank you, AJ. It's really important, I think, from AJ's story to recognise that, like, adversity comes with a role like this sometimes, and it's not hard. Like, even if you win, it gets harder, I think, if you win.
For sure.
But yeah, Nat, if you wouldn't mind telling us why you ran.
Yeah, Surrey was the only uni that came to my college about a wider participation scheme, so I was always set on Surrey. And then on my gap year, I remember watching Surrey Decides and speaking to some friends who already went to Surrey, and they were saying they started societies and all these things that I knew I wanted to get involved when I came. I was a bit more introverted when I came to university, but I kind of saw it as a time to almost get out my shell a bit. So I remember running for course rep in the business school, got that, and then there were other lectures, like we were on Liberation Committee, for example, and other things. And then on my placement year, I really wanted to be part-time officer first to kind of just see if this really was for me, so then ran and got that. And then in final year, I always wanted to basically just be a SAB, because I'd go to exec meetings just as a student, I'd watch it online, just do as much research as I could. And yeah, just speaking to other SABs, like we mentioned Coyne, I remember speaking to Coyne in my very first year, just asking what her experience was like. Speaking to Amina, who was previously the Community and Union Chair as well, and see what their experience was like, and just thought it was something I could do. Really love Rubik's, passionate about sustainability, events, volunteering, and so the community zone was just the perfect zone for me. And then I managed to get elected, really. But it was over the course of, I think, about 4 years of just getting into the mindset of, okay, I'm definitely going to run before I leave Surrey. Irrespective of whether I win or lose, I'm just going to give it a go and say I tried and fortunately was elected. So, yeah, that's why I ran.
You've done so much as well as VP Community, because I think, what's the record for most events?
Jade has the final number.
Large, medium, and small events.
Yeah, now you're active.
He was a great VP, I'm not going to lie.
Well done.
No pressure, Joe.
Got big shoes to fill.
So you guys have all touched on the fact that a big part of like your blackness is what contributed to you running, representation, and almost all of you said you spoke to a SAB before you that was also black. And so the follow-on question, is why do you think that diversity in student leadership in any union, but this one in particular, why is that important?
I think it's important because you want to see someone who looks like you and who can relate to your experience. And I feel like in my first year, there were 2 black SABs. So we had Ty and we had Koyin. Then the following year, when I ran, it was an all-white SAB team. So you notice the complete change in terms of the SAB team, even though I understand the SABs can champion diversity in different ways, but seeing someone who looks like you definitely makes you feel like you sort of belong and there's someone that's championing your issues. And I think that is evident in what we've said in terms of speaking to a SAB that comes from our background, that comes from our demographic, because they will understand the role and our experiences. That's not to say you can't go to another SAB, but your lived experience, like you previously mentioned, contributes to your experience as a SAB as well. So if I'm going into this, I sort of want to see a relatively full picture, so to say. And I think that's also why in my position, when I was VP and president, I made sure I championed things that I didn't necessarily see happening. And I think being a SAB, you have the power to contribute to numerous things and make changes and build numerous initiatives. And I think anyone in the union knows AJ was absolutely unapologetically black, and that was something I wasn't concealing. I would champion everything ethnic, anything to do with culture, because I think at the end of the day, I'm here for a year or 2, and if I can do as much as I can, I absolutely will for those students, because I don't know who's going to come after me and if they're going to care about that.
That's absolutely brilliant, yeah. Munya, would you like to go next?
I can't really add more to that. I think AJ summed it up perfectly, to be honest. I think the only thing that I would add is that when she said that there are things that she saw that nothing was being done about. When you have a diverse SAB team, you can touch on issues that may not be obviously apparent to others because of their own experiences and their own scaffolding. So it's important to have that diversity so you can tap into the entire breadth of the student experience, not just one community. Because I think as much as you might ask questions and tell people to come and speak to you, that communication channel isn't always there, neither is that feedback loop. So it's good to have people who have lived those experiences expressing their concerns, their issues within the union so that you can tackle those problems.
No, definitely. So, like, you guys always talk about the opportunities you gave to your community and your diversity. So, like, what kind of opportunities did you have as a SAB that positively impacted your community? So, Nat, did you want to go first?
One thing that I was really grateful, and I think AJ was the one that brought me into it, was the Shine Scholars Program, which is a scholarship program that the university are running for PhD students, but specifically Black British PhD students. And I think being able to shape that, because we can reference our own perspective and experience, and it was pretty awesome. I think on the event side, there's obviously the nights we did in Rubik's, the things we did in the marquee, which, not to say that, which I can say, like, I don't think many of the events that we ran would have happened if we weren't necessarily in the roles.
Yeah.
And I think that touches on everything that what AJ and Manya have said about it, the importance of it actually being there and being able to drive the agendas forward. And then also, I think, just inspiring other students, because again, I mean, like I mentioned before this, I remember seeing Musty speak to presidents when I was in my second year, and you were talking about ACS president of the union. And I think you can always have a confidence in yourself that you can run, but when you see another black person actually do it, it's that reinforcement that it is possible. And then it just continues, because then you run more events and so on. So yeah, there are a few examples.
I think for me, it was, as president, it was having a voice and actually utilizing that voice to influence the whole union. So there have been black SABs. I mean, when I was in my first year, you know, we had Osama. Osama was great. He was very friendly, very people person. Everybody knew him. It was the guy that had the afro on campus. And there was also Bakita as well, who had a massive influence as a friend to myself and Munya. But one of the biggest things, and I know Munya will talk about this as well, is like to see the union running a Black History Month event was unheard of. When I came to Surrey, the union didn't care about Black History Month, to be quite frank. And I didn't care about the union. I only cared about ACS. I'd heard about ACS in college, and I'd already said to everyone, I don't care what uni I go to, I'm going to become ACS president, because I didn't care about a students' union. And back then, Black History Month was an ACS thing. We championed it. We funded it. We had no funding from the union. It was all funded from membership funds. We got like the comedians. We got the cultural stuff. We did it. And it was only for our community. And when I got into the SU with Munya, we were like, right, we are going to make this. We're going to get the union to allocate a budget and focus on this. But we didn't just champion that. We championed LGBT. We championed a whole heap of things, right? But we had a very, very targeted approach to say, we're going to bring black to the union, right? Without putting anyone else out, without overshadowing anyone else. But we want our people to feel like the union can be home outside of just ACS, right? And it was down into the music that we booked, you know, the kind of acts we had. Me and Munya got Stormzy to Surrey. No one can tell me anything about that, right? Everybody's seen his latest video. Okay, Stormzy's gone on to become a global superstar, but that's just one of many names. And it's even in like the type of music that the union is putting on attracts your people. The kind of conversations that we're having and the kind of debates that we're having attracts your people. And I'm hearing all these people say, okay, cool, I was influenced by Koyin, I was influenced by Ty, I was influenced by all these people. Me and Munya were very influential to getting them to run. And Osama and Bakita were very influential to getting us to run. So even after we've all left, the impact of what we've done continues because we've inspired someone from our community to do something. And that inspiration is feeding down all the way, even to people I've not even met yet. You know, they're mentioning Koyin. If Koyin was here, she'd mention myself and Munya. Osama probably doesn't even know this is happening right now, but we're here mentioning Osama. And having that pass on, utilizing your voice was probably one of the biggest things for me in terms of actually just changing the culture of the
definitely
union
a legacy.
to make it well.
So can I just add to that?
Yeah, go for it, bro.
So Musi's 100% right, like, because I think one of the important things I think that's been echoed by everyone here is that like each one teach one. So one of us was in the role of power and influence, and then went to someone else and gave them the knowledge and information to be successful, or to be successful in elections, or the guidance or the support. So I think that's very important, because I think AJ said at first when like it's good to see someone like you in that position. But not only that, but that person who's in that position can also show you how to get there. I remember I was equality and diversity officer as my first union role, and I got someone called Taku to run, and Taku's the person who first pushed Black History Month within the union, and then Musti and I kind of, when we became SABs, kind of took it over. But Taku then influenced another woman called Andale to run for equality and diversity officer, and they were all Zimbabwean. So everyone thought I was trying to do the mafia, because I'm from Zimbabwe. So everyone thought I was trying to conscript all Zimbabweans to become equality and diversity officer. But I think the importance of that is just showing you that if you have the right relationships, and then you pass that knowledge on to the students or whoever it may be, whoever you have a relationship with, then we can continue this legacy longer than we are at Surrey. And everyone on the panel is a reflection of that.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because this is gonna swiftly follow on to my next question, but I remember coming to Surrey and seeing, well, in my second year, seeing Musti and Munya like everywhere together, and like it's so impactful. Even not as I'm from Zambia, but I'm not black, but even seeing two ethnic people in that position, irrespective of being black or not, you are like inspired. Even as a non-black person, you're like, oh, cool, let's go do that. So even though I saw you guys together all the time, and I guess in a way you guys had each other for support, but generally, what challenges do you face as a black officer, and do you feel that your race had an impact on your experience, like even during the election or even as an officer?
How much time do we have?
Whoa, come on.
I got stuff to say, but I'm gonna let AJ go first.
Go ahead.
Well, Munya will remember this very, very well. But there was a massive incident on Yik Yak.
You might have to tell people what that is.
Yeah, because Yik Yak, nobody even knows what Yik Yak isn't even in Surrey anymore. But Yik Yak was basically this social media app where you could have conversations anonymously based on location, right? So it's like anonymous Twitter, but you could only access the location that you were in, right? So there was a Yik Yak on Surrey, and people were having anonymous conversations, blah, blah, blah. So there was one day a black student came to me to university in the union and said, Musti, I'm really, really upset. You know, my housemates have basically made a joke to me about slavery. And when I tried to explain to them like how insensitive it was, they sort of laughed it off and made fun of me. And this girl was distraught. I can't remember her name. And I was just like, well, that's not going to stand here, like, jolting. That's not on my watch, nah. So I issued out a statement to everyone. I said, listen, yeah, this is what's happened. At the time, I was also running for Black Students Officer in the NUS, so everything just aligned for me. I didn't win Black Students Officer for NUS, but I just felt like God was calling me to speak on something, you know? So I wrote a statement, sat down with Munya, and Munya was just like, yeah, bro, pepper them. I was like, yeah, I'm peppering everyone. Like, everyone's going to get it. Put this statement out. And the statement brought out the racists in full force, right? And I remember at the time, I had Becky, bless her. Becky was at the time union chair. She came to my office. She goes, "Are you okay?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm good. Like, why is everyone asking me if I'm okay?" And my girl at the time, she was just like, "Yo, like, is everything okay with you?" I was like, "Yeah." Like, why is everyone asking if I'm alright? I'm good. She's like, "Yo, have you seen Yik Yak?" So I go on Yik Yak now. Bare racial abuse. Musti's a this, Musti's a N-word. Why would he talk about this? I said, yeah, all right, cool, no problem. Yeah, because the same day we had that annual members meeting. It was the AMM, right? And I was just like, listen, everybody needs to understand I'm a South Londoner. I'm from South London. So you might see me doing all this president union stuff, but don't ever forget my roots. Yeah, I'm Nigerian. I'm South London. And I don't take kindly to threats. So I said to Munya, should I do it? Munya was just like, Musti, like, I'm behind you the whole way. Cool. So we had the AMM, and we first did like all the formal proceedings, got through everything, and I just addressed everyone on my ones. There was probably about 500-600 people in the room. Diana was in the room, so you know. It was 03 MS02, and the room was so packed, people were standing. And I was at the front, and I just basically gave a speech and said to everyone, listen, all of you, for lack of, let me not say profanity here, all of you, like, shookheads on Yik Yak that have something to say something now. Like, I'm in the room. I know some of you in this room are the ones talking on Yik Yak. So if you got something to say it to me now, because I'm not shook. I've had bald-headed racists chase me down the road for my life. So I'm not scared of what you have to say on Yik Yak. So if you got something to say it now. Whole room silent. Said, I'm from South London, and everyone went, "Whoa." Everyone started cheering and stuff. I said, listen, if anybody's got anything to say, if you want to challenge me, I don't mind you having a challenge as to why I've put out a statement. Because there were some people that had a challenge as to why I put out a statement, but they brought it across. It was fair. We had good conversations. We had arguments over Facebook, and everybody was able to respect everyone's point of view, right? Not everybody's going to be on the same side, and I get that. But to start throwing out racial slurs, I'm not on that. And when I did that, Yik Yak that night, silent. No one had anything to say because I'm on it. Like, if you want to, like, I don't want to say it then, but I'm not president no more. So if you want to fight, I'll fight. Like, I'm not going to do it in my president t-shirt, but trust me, come around the corner. Like, if it has to get to that, I dare you to say something. No one had the guts to come out and say anything. I know Munya said some stuff that day as well. I don't even remember what Munya said because my head was just like, I want to get through this AMM so I can light up this whole room right now. That's all I was thinking about. Right?
What did you say, Munya?
What'd you say, Munya?
I was a lot less polite. I was a lot less polite than Muslim.
Yeah.
So in our sab there, I was not the polite one. Like, in our sab there, I would be the person that you put into a conversation if you want to piss people off.
100%.
And so in that, I remember that AMM because it was staggering for me, and I think AJ's got some really good examples of what she's experienced, and I'm sure Nathan as well. I think the reality is when you become a black sab, you have to be aware that you will get challenges based on just who you are, based on your race. And I saw this statement the other day that kind of encapsulated the mindset that I had, and I think the mindset that Musi had when we ran, where it said, if you occupy a space of having a victim mindset before you've even been victimized, but it's a longer road for you, your whole life, you'll just be given, I'm a victim of racism vibes. Don't be oblivious to the fact that you're in a white-dominated environment where you'll experience racial challenges. However, your mindset should be ready to adopt the challenges of being the best character first and foremost. If you ask most of the people who beat the odds, they're not focusing on the race narrative. All they're focusing on is shining so bright that even though you don't like the fact I'm black, you have no option but to be on the same side as me.
100%.
Because I add value and I come with skills and character. And I think that highlights a lot of the things that we face as black officers in terms of challenges. Like, we have to carry the burden of being black and all the stigma, racism, all the crap that comes with it. But we also have to be above reproach. We have to work 10 times harder. We have to be 10 times more valuable. And you have to always have that mindset that regardless of what I'm going to encounter, I'm going to be the best version of myself. And that day was an example of that, because that could have gone left. We could have just jumped into a big ruckus on campus in that middle of that lecture room, and that would have been it. At the time, I was president of MMA as well, so I was ready for whoever. But
and I used to train with Munya in MMA too, so let's not get it twisted. We could have done some damage, but as Munya said, we rose above that. We gave a good speech. People were behind us, and to be very, very fair to all of the unions, stuff like that, all our SABs supported us. Our officers were behind us, and they were very, very understanding of all of the issues. They stood by us, and I really, really appreciated them for that. I know they're not here, but Jack, Katie, and Alex McKenzie, who went on to become president, they all stood by us. They were all on our side. They all spoke to all their individual factions of the communities that they were vice presidents of, and it was good to have the support of your team behind such a tough moment. But that was probably the only encounter I faced the whole year. There wasn't really any other encounter prior or after that, because I think that really set the tone for, if you want more, you can have it. I'm not afraid. But our main hope was to not have that happen again and just keep pushing excellence. Because if I'm excellent, I'm just gonna annoy you more. So that's good. Yeah. But I know AJ's got some stuff to say for real, because we've spoken about this offline.
I think there's little pockets of different situations, but when I initially ran for a SAB, I ran with another girl called Amina. So we tag team. She did VP Community, I did VP Voice. I remember when we were campaigning on social media, right? And Amina messaged someone and was like, "Oh, vote for me, da 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 da." I remember that student was like, "My voting policy is no blacks, no gays." outright. It's like sometimes you think people think these things, but to overtly say it, it was like you 100% believe that narrative. So when I saw that, I was like, I'm not having it, I'm not a mug. So then I posted it in the ACS group chat to be like, this is the reality of the situations that black officers experience, and this is why you lot actually need to come through for your people and vote, because the ethnic vote carries so much weight. But sometimes I think within our community, we're not bothered. We can be really nonchalant and be like, oh, it's just one vote doesn't make a difference. So that was one incident. Fortunately, Amina and I won that campaign, so we both got elected into the position. And when I was then VP Voice, my mandate was very ethnic anyways. So I did a Bear Me student experience report, speaking to students from those communities, asking them their experience as an ethnic person at Surrey, how they find the curriculum, how they find the social space and so forth. And then even when I did the report, some university staff members still didn't get it. I remember one meeting at university council, which I was invited to, a member of staff was like, well, how many people did you actually survey? Like, is it truly representative? And I remember someone was like, even if it's one student, racism shouldn't be a thing. And I was like, yes, Osama, you absolutely tell them what's up. And then I think even then, like, the struggle doesn't end when I'm then president, for example, and I'm like, oh, first black female president. So I was like, well, who cares if you're the first black female president? It's like little things consistently happen. And there's Surrey Fest, for example. Someone in Surrey Fest will be like, oh, all AJ cares is about ethnic people. But it's like, this girl was LGBT. You didn't say, why does she care about LGBT stuff? But when it's ethnic stuff, it's a problem. And then in my VP year was when the whole Black Lives Matter movement resurfaced. So I took that on. I sent an email to all students saying, Black Lives Matter, this is what we're doing to support it, Even then, as students like, you saying Black Lives Matter is racist, why don't all lives matter? And it's like, shut up, bruv. Like, if you come to me with energy, as much as I'm very professional, I will hot you up if I need to. Emailed me, email in the bin. I didn't even respond. I was like, you don't pay my salary. I'm here to represent students, but sometimes students also need to know, like, as much as I'm a SAB and I'm a professional, I'm still a human being. And when that whole thing resurfaced, people were still saying, oh, AJ shouldn't have sent an email to all students. Why is she only talking about Black Lives Matter? All she cares about is ethnic people. And then when I became president, it's also like, yeah, she's the first black female. That's all she talks about. No one cares if she's the first black female. And it's like, as much as I mentioned little examples, microaggressions are very real. Yeah. There's so many little things that I could speak on, but I'm just like, you know what? I don't have the time. But I definitely do think it's very real. But at the same time, it was also something that made me work harder in terms of I can tell you don't see black people as good enough. So I'm going to do everything I can to support my community because our voices matter, whether you like it or not. And I think, I'm not going to lie and say it's been easy because Dakeek, she definitely knows. My SAB experience outwardly, being a SAB is absolutely amazing. But there's certain things that happen as a black woman or as a SAB that you experience that no one else will ever understand because that's just my perspective.
Nat.
I mean, I remember seeing the screenshot that was posted in the ACS chat. And I think it's something you're always aware of, but I think it's different when you actually see it because it's there. And it does make you work harder. I think that was always at the back of your head. You just have this awareness that you do need to perform. I remember when it was like, like first black, like male VP community. But then some people say the same thing. It doesn't really matter. Why is it even a thing? Well, it does matter because that's what's going to set the tone for the future. And I think throughout the year we did events, like we did the vigil for George Floyd, for example, which he spoke at. And I think it's different when we speak about it because we can relate to certain experiences. And when you and other students see that, they get involved. But it has been a tough year. We even had the incidents this year where there were the racist posters around campus. And I think there are some people that could just see it as like a problem to deal with. But that, it's more personal when you actually see it because this wasn't just on campus. This is in town. This is happening throughout the year. And you almost get to a point of just being like you're almost wired because I think it was coming off the back of a lot of things also in the news and externally as well, and it was like building up. But I think you also just have to think of like a welfare perspective as well, of like other black students and knowing that we're still here and that we're affected by it as well, but we're still dealing with it because I think you can't crumble to that stuff. You have to be resilient. You have to work harder. I remember getting messages from like, my family as well because they always saying they're like, yo, are you good? Because like they obviously don't live in Guildford, but they're aware of the things that's going on. And so, I think it is just about working hard and just being aware of the things and supporting everyone.
100%. Adding something very, very small to that, I think what you'll probably find is all the black people, or at least most black people, will champion every diversity issue. Like, we were champions for LGBT, we were champions for disabilities, we were champions for everything. But we see the resistance we get when we champion black issues. I didn't see resistance when I was saying women should be president. When I was president, yeah, let's get more females in. Yeah, fantastic. Oh, that's such a great initiative. Oh, do you know what? Let's make, the campus more accessible. Oh, great. Let's promote LGBT week. Fantastic. Oh, let's have, more black officers. Oh, why does that matter? And it's that used to just piss me off. But it also makes me go, well, I'm going to shine and I'm going to pull my people through. And if you don't like it, well, then I dare you not to like me talking about women or not to like me talking about, because you're not saying anything about that. You're only saying anything stuff when I talk about race. So, yeah.
I think just something to add to that. So as a SAB, you get access to the highest level of decision making or governance within the university and within the local community, and you influence a lot of things. And I remember I sat in a meeting with the head of police, and Alan was there. I remember this conversation, and I remember we were talking about disproportionate stop and search rates for black people within Surrey. Musti gave his experience, I gave my experience, gave a few anecdotal experiences of other students, but obviously they want to see how many people have actually complained, how many issues have been raised. But we had to really identify some that, like, we don't believe in institutional policing. We don't have faith in it because disproportionately impacts our community in a different way to everyone else. Yeah. But whenever we raise that issue, nobody seems to take account for it. But then the long-term negative impact of that is that we just don't buy into like the police structure as a whole, or we don't feel safe with the police around us. And I remember at the end of the meeting, after we've had this whole discussion, the head of police turned around and said, "Oh, so where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Zimbabwe." He goes, "Oh, Rhodesia." Everyone that knows history knows Rhodesia is the colonial name for Zimbabwe. Nobody calls Zimbabwe Rhodesia unless you're an old racist white guy, right? And in that, I had to correct him. I said, "No, I'm from Zimbabwe." And Alan looked at me because Alan was waiting for me to blow up and go crazy. But I understood in that moment, if I responded and got angry, I would have been another angry black man. Even though he had antagonized me and he knew what he was doing, I had to hold my tongue and behave like the good guy, right? And I think a lot of times as a black Sab, like, and it echoes what Musti said, what AJ said, what Nathan said, you always have to, like, we always have to do that whole Michelle Obama thing where, like, when they go low, we go high. And sometimes that's tiring and exhausting. But always remember that by going high and maintaining your cool, you still make sure that your voice is as powerful, in fact, even more powerful in those spaces where decision-making and governance actually go on. So, yeah, that was just my last bit on that.
I think what's really, like, interesting from all your stories is that even though you've experienced something exceptionally difficult, in all your examples, you still have, it's almost as though you guys are like the poster people for black people when you're a SAB. And I don't think I haven't experienced it yet. I don't know if you've experienced it yet, but I don't feel like other SABs of other races are under the same pressure as, like, I'm the sole representative of, like, probably won't happen. It won't happen, to be fair. But, I don't have the same eyes on me that you guys have, and it's like, oh, as a black person, you represent absolutely everybody. And I think that even though you guys are having to be continuously resilient against all these things that you come up against, I think that's quite difficult for you guys. Like, I can't break because, like, I have to be like this.
And additionally, like, I feel like when everyone does want to chat back, everyone does want to be like, that's not acceptable, and then you're always being put like, oh, why are you being so aggressive? Why are you being all of this? And it's like, where is this coming from? You're the one who's targeting me, and then as soon as I want to respond back in the same manner, it's always turning the other table.
Yeah. I think a good point to raise here, I'm going to say someone like Maz. So Maz was president when Musti and I were vice presidents, but he was never really like part of the ACS group. He kind of went his own way. But I remember he used to feel the pressure in a different way because people used to look at him and say he's a bounty because he wasn't like into Afrobeats and all of that, and he wasn't part of the ACS community and all the rest of it. And I think the hard part is, like, if you're a black Sab, you can get it from all sides. And because I think a lot of people feel that black people should be a monolith, that we should all be the same, that we should all have the same views and the same things. But, like, by the fact we're black, we will experience the same problems, the same issues. But sometimes, and this is more a plea to everyone, if you have black Sab, regardless of if you agree with them politically or not, support them. Because it's difficult.
I don't know what's happening, but you're brushing the mic, bro. You're brushing the mic. I don't know what's happening, but it's brushing off.
Kel, what was the last thing that anyone heard?
Well, you're talking about Maz, right? And then after that, we heard. Psh, 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 psh.
He says he's a bounty. You were saying that.
So what I was saying is that, did you hear say? So what I was saying that Maz it wasn't like Musti, AJ, and I. He didn't go through the ACS route. He didn't really have heavy ACS support. Like he wasn't really into Afrobeats, all of that. He wasn't a part of the, we'll say, quote unquote black community within Surrey, but he was still a black Sab.
Yeah.
And when he came into office, like he had to fight the whole idea that black people are monolith, that we're all the same, that we have the same opinions and thoughts, and so he felt somewhat ostracized from our community. And what I'd say is that if you have black SABs or black officers in office, regardless of your political differences, right, please support them because they will still be facing the same issues based on their blackness that you will, even if they disagree with you politically.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree. You guys had to go through so much, but we are so grateful and thankful that you did what you did and stood up for yourself, stood up for your community. So, like, what kind of advice would you give first years who would want to run for officer positions?
I say just do it, because worst case you lose, and if you lose, you can come back. Because at the end of the day, it all starts from somewhere. Being a part-time officer is just the beginning. You can go on to be VP, you can go on to be president, but it's all about taking that initial step and sometimes coming out of your comfort zone. Like, I was very much in a black space, in a black community. I was ACS president, and even most of my friends are ethnic, whereas the union's more so a white space, so to say. I think I was the only black PTO when I was in the union, but that's not to say everything is all about race. There's so much things you can do and so many things that you can champion. And I say if it's something you want to do, honestly, just do it. And there's so many people that will be willing to vote for you and willing to support you. And sometimes not even people you know, like even campaigning. It's like, yeah, I told my flatmate to vote. I've never seen in my life, but I appreciate you for telling me that you told your flatmates to vote for you. Like, there's so many people out there that genuinely do care about some of the things you will care about when you write your manifesto, and you'll actually really appreciate how so many people come together to back you, even if they actually don't have a clue who you are, or you don't know them. They just heard your name or they've seen you around campus. But when you campaign, I think the solidarity and the support you get, unmatched, for sure.
Yeah, like, what would you say to your younger self running? Like, any advice you would give
I
to
would
your younger
I say good job, man. I think good job for persevering, because I think it was definitely very easy for me to be like, I've lost president, I'm not going to come back. But I think I saw a vision, I saw a goal, and I knew what I wanted. And that's kind of what motivated me to come back and be president. Because I think, like what you previously mentioned, adversity is a thing. But I think, like, adversity is my middle name at this point, or resilience is my middle name. That's it. But you just fall back, you get back up, and I think that's really important. But there's something you mentioned in the last question I wanted to touch on, and I think black Sab's experience are similar but different, because being a woman is definitely different from being a guy.
100%.
And that's something I've definitely felt, because I was like, if I was a black man, absolutely this wouldn't be happening. But when you're a woman, sometimes people don't necessarily hear your voice, or they sometimes you're like, oh yeah, whatever. And that's why I feel like in my role as president, or speaking to Messi in his role as president, like when I was president, I'm like, bro, it's because you're a guy. And sometimes as a woman, you don't get the privilege or the respect that a man would get. And being a black woman on top of that, double whammy. But I think resilience is really important, like I previously mentioned, about whether I'm a woman, whether I'm a guy, irrespective of how I identify, you absolutely need to give me the same respect that you give everyone else. But that's definitely something I would have felt, or did feel rather, as a Sab in certain spaces. Because I was like, if it was a guy, you definitely wouldn't be saying this.
Nat, you came from, before you even got here, you knew you were going to run. Which is different, and we didn't have to convince you that hard. Why do you think that was different? Why do you think that this experience in general was just important to you? And following on from Joe, what advice would you give your younger self?
So as in, like, why did I always
I mean, you didn't need convincing. You came and you're like, yeah, I'm legit.
Like, how come you thought about that? Like,
I think for me, so I will say, when I was in college, they had like a student. Obviously, the scales are a lot different, but I was involved in the Students' Union, and we, at the time, my college didn't have a quality diversity officer or an events officer, so I did that and saw the impact you could have at that level. So I always thought at university I could do something similar. But then I will say, I think I always knew, because, as I said, when I was on my gap year, I had some friends that had come to Surrey and they were setting up societies and things, and I thought, okay, I could have the impact. And then when I got here, though, I remember when they did the core chef elections in the business school, again, I was super, super introverted. And I remember I stood up, and obviously you give a speech and then they vote. But I remember afterwards, some people kept coming up to me saying, "Oh, that's going to be like a really cool idea if you do this event or you do that." And it's almost kind of inspiring. It's kind of what AJ said, like people that you don't know supporting you, and I think that gives you confidence. And then, I think through Liberation Committee was also impactful because that was purely just about championing equality and diversity on campus. Throughout the years, through societies, obviously the Business School Society was a huge impact for me. Just get loads of experience, and I think when it did come to running, I was actually going to run in my first year for PTO. But then I think I actually spoke to Sam Bryington about it, and he was like, "Oh, you should," but I just didn't feel ready enough. I was like, "No, I want to get involved in societies first, learn more about the union and so on."
You did do liberation though, so like involvement day one.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I was like, culture, liberation, like other stuff before I go in Sorry Decides. Because I remember sitting in Rubik's and seeing like, oh, how do they speak on the panel and not get flustered? Like I thought I'd get like nervous. So I was like, let me wait that out a bit. And then I think on placement, I was just like, now and that was last year you can be a PTO kind of unless you do masters. So then ran. But yeah, I think the experience overall was good. I think it helped knowing that you are going to run because then you can kind of almost be strategic in the things that you run for beforehand to get experience. And then in terms of advice, I would again echo what AJ said, just do it. I think if I kept contemplating it like I did in first year, then I never would have run. And I think I think it is good because you kind of some like close friends or course mates really like pushing you to do it. But then I just kept thinking back to I didn't want to leave Surrey and think, I regret it. And it wasn't about being a SAB, it was just about running, period. Because even running, like the people I met, like the experiences you get. So I just say just do it.
Yeah, definitely. I loved hearing about the experience you gained as a SAB. Like, Musti, what was your experience that you gained from a SAB personally?
Probably it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. There's no job interview I've gone to post-Surrey that I've mentioned my experience that I haven't got the role. It's probably one of the most invaluable things I learned how to do. I learned how, I guess it brought out a lot of gifts in me. I learned that I was very good at talking to a large crowd of people, and I realized that people weren't actually good at that. I thought people could just get up and practice and become better at that. I realized some people actually just don't have the confidence or the ability to see a room of people and influence every single person's emotions in that room. Push me into hosting. I host a lot of shows. I come back every year just for Surrey ACS. I host their show every year. And I will keep hosting it until they tell me, stop coming, right? Whilst I was at Surrey, me and Munya, we were like Ant and Dec of Surrey. Every event, we hosted all of that, right? And it built a lot of confidence. You know how to manage a crowd. You know how to kind of get out on stage and be confident. But also, probably one of the biggest things I learned how to do was how to think on my feet. A lot of time as president, stuff happens like that. You get told 10 minutes before, you need to go here and deliver this speech. These are all the points. That's it. You've got 10 minutes. And you're literally reading the points on the way to the meeting. You've got Kath, who's typed up the points for you. Alan's like, I've read it for you. They've given you a summary of what you need to deliver. And you go there and you have to deliver it and speak for students. And stuff like that happens all the time. But that level of experience, I promise you, and even Surrey Decides alone, whether you win or whether you lose, the experience of being in Surrey Decides is second to none. Because, and Alan was the one that told me this, he said, whether you win or lose, there is no interview process for any job that will ever be as bad as Surrey Decides. If you can put yourself through Surrey Decides, you will ace every single interview you leave Surrey with. Whether you win or whether you lose, the experience of that panel will prepare you for every interview you sit for life. And it's true. Like, when people think you're nervous, I don't get scared for any interview. I'm like, I've sat and been grilled by 2,000 students on the spot, right? And back then we used to have Charlie Eastall, okay? And none of you guys know about that because I would say Surrey Decides has become a lot more, they care about how you feel now, yeah? Back then, they would dig into your life and bring out your personal life on stage and say, is this not you on the roof of this house doing X, Y, Z in front of the whole student body? And you have to defend yourself. Like, Surrey Decides was so controversial. We used to trend on Twitter. That's how controversial. And you'd have to sit there and defend your actions. They would find all the dirt on you. All the dirt you think can't be found, they'd find it. But that's because that was the game back then. That was politics. And you had to know how to think on your feet. And just that experience was invaluable. And it's carried me through all the positions I've got now as an accountant.
Cheeky drop. Yeah,
you have to drop that, so people know the levels. You get it?
100. AJ, as the most recent Student Union president, what do you envision and hope for the future of this SU?
Um, I hope that the Students' Union is more diverse in terms of the SAB team and the people it brings as well as the staff, because there's people behind the scenes. And I say that because I think your experience ultimately determines to an extent what you champion. And I think when there's a diverse staff team or a diverse SAB team, they speak on different issues that pertain to certain groups. So, for example, if you're a disabled person, if you're from the LGBT community, there's so many different aspects of the union that as SABs we're not able to cover the entire breadth. And I hope that as the years go by, it's nothing special to see a black SAB. It's just like, it just becomes a norm, so to say. Diversity becomes a norm. It's not a thing where I'm the black SAB and I feel like I must carry all the black issues. It's a thing where the responsibility is spread across all staff members and across all sabbatical team. And I think in terms of the future of the union, I'd like to see the union more empowered, so to say. This is what I was mentioning previously about just because something's happened like this in this year doesn't mean it has to happen like this in the following year. Be open to change, be adaptable and willing to tackle new issues that haven't necessarily happened in the previous year. So like in my year, I did a campaign on Islamophobia Awareness Month. I didn't say because the union's never done it before, I'm not going to do it. As the team changes and as the team evolves, I want there to be numerous things being championed over a period of time. And I think I've definitely seen that in your SAB team, like Joe being the first East Asian VP community to run for president. You'd be the first female Asian like SAB as president. So I think you definitely do see the changes in the next team, and I think as the year goes by, I'd love it to become a norm, so to say.
Munya, you've got your hand up. We
You're
can't
on
hear
mute.
you.
You're on mute.
Munya, we
That
can't
was
hear
from
you, bro. You
before,
muted
sorry.
it. Come on, man.
That was from before. Sorry, I don't know.
Legacy hand, they call it a sorry. Misty, as previous student union president, do you think that it's gone how you thought it would? Do you think you've gotten worse, gotten better?
It's gone how I thought it would, in terms of I'm happy to sit here today and see that post myself on Munya's era as Sabs, you know, Nath has been able to become president, AJ's been able not president, VP community, AJ's been able to become president, Coin was a Sab, Ty was a Sab, more part-time officers, and in our year we had hit the highest number of black students that had ever run for full or part-time positions ever. And that was a very, very proud achievement for Munya and I to say, yeah, we had that impact on our community. One thing I wish we did, I wish we embedded it more into KPIs.
Yeah.
I wish we embedded it more at a trustee level. Yeah. But again, that was as a lack of experience. We didn't know better then because we were still, you know, we hadn't seen the world. We hadn't gone out and got life experience. But having got life experience now and understanding more the impact of what a trustee team can do and the impact of KPIs and the impact of objectives, I would have liked to see that more sewn in, because I realize now that we were able to have that impact because we were here. And once we've left, you know, there's been some certain things that have happened and some stories I've heard, especially from AJ, that I'm like, I wish we did more to embed this culture from a bylaws perspective, from a KPIs perspective when we were here, but we didn't have the foresight at the time to do so.
Even the knowledge, really.
Or even the knowledge. We didn't understand the power of that. We just thought, yes, we've changed the culture, we've brought this here, fantastic, this will continue, right? But things change and environments change and people change, and we understand that, you know, and I'm very happy for what we've achieved. I'm very happy to see these guys sitting on the panel today. I'm very happy to know that it didn't end with Munya and I, because before Munya and I was only Osama and Brakita, and before Osama, there was one guy from 2006 and I think he was Nigerian, you know, and he was also an ACS president.
Falarin.
Right, Falarin,
Yeah.
right? And ACS was huge then. And it was, you know, Alan obviously knew all the history and everything. And he said, you know, now that we've come in, there's a pipeline of ACS coming through. So yeah, that's on purpose. It's not an accident.
Yeah.
Like, we wanted that to be the case. But I would love to see, you know, that embedded. And again, I know we're talking about Black History Month, but not just for Black History Month, you know, for every person that needs representation, I'd love to see that culture embedded in the bylaws at a trustee level, for that conversation to come up at trustees that, okay, cool, how many candidates have we got to run this year? that are from this community or that identify here or that have this disability, and for that to be something that is tracked to look at and say, okay, cool, we need to do more to reach this community, because those conversations took place, and to be very fair to Alan, he'd bring those conversations up, you know.
Alan's the former CEO of the Students'
Alan is the
Union.
former CEO of the Students' Union, and he'd say, we need to focus on this, we need to focus on that. And Munya and I would come up with all these ideas, but what we didn't realize at the time was that we need to embed this. So I'd love to see that continue.
Definitely. So, like, Munya, what areas should the university focus on for future improvement? Being VP Voice, that's a massive thing in your area.
To be honest, I don't think I'm qualified to even answer that question anymore, because I left Surrey 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So, like, the issues that you guys face today, I'm not 100% familiar with. But from what I understand, the issues are the same issues are eternal. So it's making sure there's the right level of representation within the student university, within the student union. Make sure there's the right level of representation within the university itself. Increasing the number of black staff members at the university will help, I think. Creating safe spaces for communication within the university. Student union still championing, and as Lucy said, embedding KPIs around student officers' participation, all the rest of it, engagement, a variety of different events that cover the scope of the student body, so not just one particular aspect, which I think the union's already doing now to a degree with the R&B nights and all the other elements and the investment to Black History Month, but just more of that, really. But beyond that, I'm not qualified to say very much because I'm not you guys. And I think one of the things that we all need to remember is that the student experience should always be led by students, 100%. By the feedback of students, by the opinions of students, and it should always be people first, policy second.
Yeah.
Because from the people will come your policies, from their experiences will come your priorities. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
As someone who sits on council at the moment, I think it's so, I don't know what the word is, almost surprising to go into council and there's not a black person on that committee. And I remember thinking when I went in with AJ for my first time, I was like, oh, AJ's the only black person in this room. And it's like relying on officers to be that representation, I find quite a difficult sort of pill to swallow.
It's interesting. There was a black woman on council when I was on council, but I remember having a conversation with Alan. He said that he said the difficulty is when you get to university council, and he was trying to explain to me what my job was that there comes a certain level where it's more about wealth than race.
Yeah.
And you have to explain to everybody that's wealthy that these poor students have all of these issues that they're going through. So please do not just think of the university from a financial perspective. Think of it as, you know, these are our students, this is what they're going through. And it's not just about how many students can we cram in here and, you know, get our balance sheet up and get our numbers up and everything's financially great. Actually, they need a great experience. So he was trying to remind me that you'll see diversity in council, you know, gender-wise, ethnicity-wise, at my time, but you won't necessarily see the diversity in wealth. And understanding that you're the only person there that can talk for these. That's not a billionaire, you know? Amen. One day I will be. But
I will call you back for council.
Call me back. But it's important to just represent that. So I think, but Munya's 100% right. You two are closer to what the current experience is. In my time, the biggest thing I had an argument with university about the infrastructure. Stop overcrowding this university without giving everyone appropriate accommodation. But times have changed. That was 6-7 years ago, 2015. Like, I am not qualified to speak on the student experience anymore. I'm no longer a student. But you guys are much more closer, and obviously you guys are in office, and you guys in the audience are students. So you guys are the future of this.
VP voice,
the more you
VP
feed in
maybe.
to the sabbs, the more they will champion exactly what you say that will affect your current experience. So,
So perfectly led on from the future. Why do we find resistance from ethnic, or in this particular forum, from the ACS community to run? Why do we find that it's almost like the job of whichever Black Sabbath is to go out and find some more black people to come and fill their shoes? Why do you think that we feel that resistance, and how can we embed that into our culture that we always have a stream of the diversity coming through? anyone.
I think this comes back down to the culture point, right? It is the union's responsibility to create a culture that is welcoming to all, right? Not just in one World Week. Yeah, one World Week is great, right? But you gotta have events that cater to everyone, right? So, you know, it's not, I remember when I was a fresher, I was seeing like every single week I'd look at the union events and be like, bro, there's not one R&B event. There's not one Afrobeats event. There's not nothing. I don't want to go to that. I'm only going to ACS. When we got in, we were like, right, cool, we're going to book Shaka. We're going to do Shaka for Black History Month. Oh, we're going to book Stormzy. Oh, we'll book Kano. We'll book Big Nasty. But that's not going to stop you from booking S Club 7 if you want to. If you want to book S Club 7, bring them. I will go to S Club 7 too. You think I don't know S Club? I will start singing right now. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But the culture really has to be a big thing. And the events being a big thing that the union does, that's one way to bring the culture through. But again, it comes back to my point of embedding this into bylaws, embedding this into the infrastructure, right? I can understand, okay, cool, you know, there's an argument that there should be more black staff, there should be more black, or there's also an argument that says, well, everybody should have a fair chance to apply. My argument would be, well, we'd want to try and encourage as many people to apply as possible, for example, right? But if everything is embedded into the system, irrespective of who is here, irrespective of what culture you're from, irrespective of whether or not there is an all-white or all-black SAB team or whatever, there are bylaws and systems in place that force you to focus on the fact that this has to be a level playing ground. Because I don't think it would be right to say, well, we should only have black officers running. No, everybody should run. I encouraged everyone to run, right? And I know these guys would have done the same. I was just passionate about putting black people in the hat. Like, I'm not saying you're going to win, and I'm not saying I 100% want you to win just because you're black. You might be rubbish, bruv. You might come in and just be dead. Yeah? But what I want is for you to feel confident enough to put your name in the hat. At least be confident to run. And if the union can get that right, from all levels of diversity, for women, for LGBT plus community, for disabled students, you know, for black students, that is where we would see a really, really good move.
What do you think, Nat? How can we get more people from more diverse communities to run? Obviously, in this forum, particularly black students, but from all communities.
I think there's a part in promoting achievements. I remember speaking to Hannah. Am I good? I remember speaking to Hannah Jones about it, but I think promoting achievements from previous SABs, like in the union, there's still the plaque, the award that Munya got from USL. Yeah. I know it's just small. It's just small.
It's not
like
an award. I started that.
Started it.
That's mine.
Come collect your plaque.
Yeah, come, it's yours.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely coming to collect it. Tell me what office is in. I'm coming.
But yeah, like it's even that. I think it's getting people to run, but it's also just knowing that you can achieve. And I think it just goes back to the excellent point. It's not about just getting in the role, but when you are in the role, doing as much as you can. So yeah, just showcasing achievements and highlighting previous black officers and what they've done, PTO and SAB, not just SABs, but also PTOs as well. So.
Yeah, like
Just a small add to that. It would be great to also add in what they've gone on to do.
Yeah.
Because
what you talked about,
we've actually gone on to do a lot of stuff. So
it's coming.
saying,
Stop ruining.
we're doing some good things in the world
Ruining
right
it.
now. Just saying.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite time? What's your favorite memory of Surrey? AJ, do you want to go first?
I need time to think. I've been here 6
Okay,
years.
Munya.
Muns, your favorite memory of Surrey?
What
Is that as a SAB or just in general?
You know what? As a SAB and in general, give me both.
Oh,
As a SAB, it would probably be the night bus. So when we start the night bus,
I remember that.
That was a great memory.
Yeah,
I think because it just made things easier and safer for people to travel around Surrey. So that's something that most people aren't aware of, that we started the night bus.
Yeah.
And I think my favourite memory as a student is probably the parties that were in ACS.
Hey, don't talk too much now.
Those are my favourite memories. That was it, really. Those are my favourite memories. But I think ultimately that, and then also Strictly Come Surrey.
Yeah.
That was really good.
bringing
Strictly
that
Come
back.
Surrey.
That's coming back this year.
Oh, I love toasting that.
Is
That
it?
was so
Yeah.
sick. Me and
but
Munya.
That can be a cheeky plug now.
Me and Munya
Yeah.
did that, boy. That was sick.
That was dope, but it was good seeing university staff and university students
Yeah.
come together, and those moments were really cool. So I remember we played the university at football, and we lost, which is I can't believe we lost. I don't know how we
believe that,
lost to old men like that, but no.
I know.
But I think those kind of moments are my favorite. You know, when you see people actually come together from very, very different backgrounds and very, very different priorities.
Yeah.
AJ?
My favorite memory as a student is probably when I ran for VP Voice, because the support I had, immense. I think it's having friends come together to stick up my posters, people I didn't know that were voting for me, posting things on their social media platform. I think that's definitely my favorite memory in terms of campaigning is so stressful, and I acknowledge how exhausting it is, but seeing people come together for you is definitely something I definitely cherish. And I think especially when it's people that don't necessarily care about side to side. Some of my friends are just average black students, they don't care about the union, but like because it matters to you, we'll come through and we'll support you. So I think that's definitely probably my favorite memory, because of the support I had and also what it led to. As a SAB, I think it's hard one. I don't think I can pinpoint, but what I will say as president that I did like was hosting Univision. I think that was a fantastic show in terms of I like presenting, I like hosting. So I'd say Univision was definitely my favorite memory, and just seeing how much work actually goes into production, like big up Stag TV stage crew, because it's actually, and that as
Stage
well,
crew,
obviously,
Stag
I was
TV.
gonna shout out Stage Crew.
Always,
because
always.
the amount of work they had to put into that, it definitely was like, I don't actually get to see this perspective as a student or as a SAB. So me hosting was definitely me, my element, but also seeing how they're doing the camera angles and there's this guy moving along. I think, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it was definitely probably my favorite experience as president.
Nat?
Oh, I was gonna say March 20th as well. Univision was a big event just because it was such like a long project and had so many students involved. The only other experience that can match that, I think, was honorary membership. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was something I like prayed for 4 years. But then I think as a student, so I was obviously as a SAP, as a student, running for course rep in first year, so I think that kind of started everything else. So.
Especially because you ran in a massive school. Like, it must have been like 300 people in this room trying to vote for you. That's mad.
I mean, looking back at it now, like I think because when you've done that, I mean, speaking in front of people, it just becomes
You're used to it.
even things like gala or like big events where
All
you have
the
to speak.
balls and stuff,
You don't even think about it. You just kind of do it. But I remember at the time, though, you kind of just because they wait to the end as well. You just sat, not really focusing on the lecture, just you just want to get it like done.
Yeah.
and then if you don't get it, like at least you can say you've done it. But I think it's just that build up. But yeah, that'd probably be a big moment.
Probably my favorite experience as a student was winning ACS president. I don't know what elections are right now, but back then, ACS elections are the only elections that were on par with Surrey Decides. It was serious.
Isn't it called ACS Decides?
Like,
is that not
There
what
were
it's called
campaign
now?
videos.
people, we used to do, I had a campaign video to be ACS president. Not union, ACS. I had one for union president as well, right? They had people come back from placement just to grill you to see if in final year, their experience was in your hands. Was it going to be good? People left their jobs to come back and grill you to see, are you going to do this job correctly? So winning that, I think I was speaking to a room of 110 people, trying to get them to, I think what was it, LTD or LTD, one of them big LTs, yeah? The room was filled to the back, and I'm trying to win ACS president. It was great. And then my favorite experience is a SAB. I've got two, right? And I
shouting
can't.
at us about Yik Yak.
What you want to say?
Was it shouting at us about Yik Yak? Was that the best?
No, but that was really sick though. I wanted everybody to know, I'm president, but I'm still from the ends. Like, anyways, we won't get into that, right? No, my two favorite experiences. One was when we booked Stormzy, yeah? This was a movie, right? Because we were trying to book Skepta. And Skepta at the time was 18 grand. We didn't have the budget for it, right? And me and Munya were like, now check again. Like, we want Skepta to come, because that was when Skepta just put out Shutdown. And we were like, listen, if Skepta comes to Surrey, your name is etched forever in history, right? But he was too expensive. And then the agent said to Jade, he was like, but we've got this guy called Stormzy, and he's going for $3,000 at the time, right? $3,000. And Jade was like, well, he said he's got some guy called Stormzy. We've never really heard of him. Munya and I looked at each other, looked at Jade and said, book him. Trust us right now. You need to book him, right? And Jade was like, are you sure? We were like, listen, trust us. Book Stormzy, yeah? By the time Stormzy came to Surrey, student unions were booking him for 15 grand because he had blown up, right? Which we knew. And we were shook he wasn't going to come because we were like, yo, he's getting 15K. He might decide that he's going to cancel 3K, but he came. He was a gentleman. He brought his entourage, and he was the first artist that finished his performance and came to party with everyone. He actually came, and we gave him like a little booth, and he like partied with the students. But you have to remember, he's the same age as us. So like he came at a time where everybody was around the same age as him. So I was like, he's one of us, and he was a super cool guy. Gave a great performance. But
after party at Manor Park.
After party at Manor Park. Listen, don't talk about that, bro. Don't talk about that. But then one thing that was super great, I remember sitting there at end of year show. It was when we had Kano, we had So Solid Crew, did Big Nasty come down? I can't remember when but that lineup on that, I remember sitting thinking,
Big Nasty as well.
This is the last event we've ever put on at Surrey. And this is the sickest event I've ever seen. Stage crew was just hitting it with the lights. Kano was on there. The whole crowd was jumping. Lights were in the crowd. I just looked at money. I was like, yeah, we did that. Like, and it was just sick just to stand. I always, every time I come to Rubik's, I was always at the balcony, the top bit, just by stage, like by where the lights are controlled. I like to just see the vibe of the crowd and just to see that night and what stage crew did with the lights. Whew, dangerous. That was a good night, boy. I'm not gonna lie to you. So yeah.
Right. So one final question, the one that you preempted. How did being a sab impact you now? What are you guys up to? What's going on? Who wants to go first?
So from being a sab, I went to train to become an accountant. I'm now a qualified accountant, which is fantastic. So I currently work for a bank. I'm their external reporting analyst, which is great. Money's decent, I'm not gonna lie. It's a decent. You know, there's still a cost of living crisis though, low key. So like the pennies and the pounds are, you know what I'm saying? We're counting the pennies, but no, it's been a great experience there. I'm also a finance coach, so I like help people with budgeting, financing, teaching them about money, teaching them about investing. Something I'm really, really passionate about is getting, especially the black community, to understand what it means to invest. We often talk about something called the black tax, which you only understand if you're black, which means when you make it, as opposed to paying your money forward, your responsibility is to pay all your money back to everybody that suffered for you. But the problem is, you then have no money to pass on to your children. So guess what happens? They start off from ground zero, right? So I'm very, very passionate about teaching people this is where you need to put your money. And there's so many things I've learned post 25 that I wish I knew pre 25. And I'm so passionate about coaching people through that and just helping you get better in finances. Because the earlier you have the knowledge, the better it is. So I'm doing that as well. I also host. So I host shows. I host ACS shows. I host weddings. I host birthday parties. And yeah, man, you know, I charge for them too. You know, it's not free. I'm very good at what I do. And I'm very, very proud to say that I do that. So, and you know, I'm a dad now, you know. So I got a little baby girl. She is 11 months. As of 2 days ago.
I like how this whole talk and they clap, now you have a baby.
Well, you know, I had to drop the baby last because, you know, the most important thing in my life right now is her, and she's just fantastic. So, yeah, man, life has really moved on. But it's been, I owe a lot of what I've achieved to my experience as a SAB and just the lessons I learned, perseverance, hard work, you know, and being able to adapt to any situation. So, yeah, man, that's what I'm up to now.
AJ?
Still full-time baby girl. Nah, I think I've got a job now. I work for Imperial College, so I'm still in the higher education sector. That's not to say I'm going to be there forever because I've just left my SAB year. Right now, I think I'm exploring different avenues in terms of, I know public speaking is definitely something I like in terms of events, speaking, keynote speaking, but also hosting. So I think I'm trying to tap into different things in the fact that being a SAB, you do loads of public speaking, you host events, you deliver presentations and meetings. So I think I'm trying to ensure that the skills that I've enhanced as a SAB doesn't just fall off, because I think in life it's really important to do more than one thing. There's money to be made in this world. So I think 100%. That's kind of where I'm at the moment. Keep my options open, but still in higher education sector.
That's brilliant. Nat?
I did my placement at Warner Brothers, so going back to film and entertainment soon. Yeah, but just bro.
That's amazing.
But I think in terms of a SAB, obviously my role, events and entertainment. So right now, setting up an events management and talent management company, had an event at the Boiler Room, which you guys came to, which is awesome, with an amazing artist. So yeah,
This guy's doing some good stuff, you know.
He's a manager as well.
I'll invite you to the next one.
Yeah, invite him to the next one.
I'll invite you to the next one.
Yeah, Munya?
So I learned a lot about like being proactive whilst being a sab, and so now I do a number of things. So I run an events and entertainment company. So we do events all over the world, including Malta, Dubai, Ibiza, Miami, all the rest of it. We partner with resorts. So some of your favorite festivals that you've seen in Malta, you're welcome.
Didn't invite me though, but it's cool.
Alongside that, got a music management company, a talent management company. We just hit 50 million streams this year. So that's great. And then I also am head of demand generation for a crypto blockchain company. So like one thing that Sab Life taught me was that I can do everything I want to do.
Fact.
I just need to manage my time.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm doing now is managing my time so I can do all the things that interest me. I will not do anything in life that I don't enjoy. Like that's one thing that Sab Life taught me, that you have to be passionate about what you do, because it can get dead very quickly if you're doing stuff just for the money. So everything I do now is just about passion and enjoyment and me feeling as if I can add value and make an impact. Beyond that, I don't want to have any part of it. So that's my primary focus.
One thing Munya didn't mention, and I'm gonna big him up for this, and he might be like, oh, blah, blah, because Munya doesn't do accolades, but I'll big him up for this, right? Frisky, everybody knows Frisky. If you're in Guildford, you know Frisky Ents, yeah? Frisky started in our second year, right? When Munya was a student. 2012, right? Frisky started. 2022, Frisky's still going. Year on year, booking the best acts. Even through pandemic, Frisky's still going. And it's all because Munya's business acumen and understanding what's hot. So I know he won't say it about himself, but I think it's worth giving him the props that he had the opportunity to really go for something and push it through. And it's been getting 10 years strong. How many people can say their companies lasted 10 years, right? So the opportunities and possibilities are endless. You just have to believe. That's it.
I think one of the key things that I want to say is that university is a testing ground for everything that you want to do in life.
Facts.
You just have to really throw yourself into it. Like, there is no safer place to try things and fail than university.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's a SAB, whether it's go through clubs, societies. I told you I started the MMA club there. There is no safer place to try the things that you want to do. So, like, the only thing you have to lose is time, really.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for you to do everything you want to do.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Speaking of Frisky, we've got an after party by Frisky and ACS tonight in the basement.
Come on, G.
But yeah,
Come on, G.
we're going to play a little game now. So, Munya, would you like to grab a piece of paper and
Boy.
grab a piece of paper and a pen, and we're going to play Who's Most Likely To?
Okay.
I'm a modern babe. I'm a modern day babe, so I'm going to use my notes on my laptop.
Yeah, that's fine. Or you can type it in the chat and then we'll see it pop up.
Okay.
All right.
Or yeah, you can just say it, yeah.
You just say it, bro.
Or you can point to the person. So like Nat's on your right, AJ's on your left, and Missy's in front of you, like right in the middle. So you can be like, ooh.
Right, left, center, cool, done.
Okay, what are we saying?
All right, so the first question is, who's most likely to be a billionaire?
Look, I just put my name forward.
If you don't believe in
I
yourself,
said, believe
for
in
real.
yourself.
Like, come on, man.
Please, what's the meaning of this?
That's how you know we're true African. We all back ourselves.
Literally all.
Munya. I know Munya's waiting at Munya,
Absolutely.
I love that. All right, so
Confidence.
who's most likely to go on Love Island?
Most likely to go on Love Island. Out of all the people here.
Yeah.
Out of all the people here.
Pointing at
AJ.
That is Galdon
AJ.
B-class, man.
I'm not gonna lie, still, it's gotta be Nat, bruv.
I was gonna
A
say,
handsome young man like that. Eligible.
It's gotta be Nat.
I'll take
Come
that
on.
as
Why?
a
Tell me
compliment.
why it's gonna be
Yeah,
why it has to be Nat
100%.
and not AJ. Tell me.
AJ's not going on Love Island.
I'm too reserved for that.
She don't care.
I'm
Tell me
going to
why AJ's going on
I
Love
AJ
beg
will
to
Island.
get
differ.
kicked off Love Island. AJ will get kicked off Love
She'll get
Island.
kicked off. Someone will get on AJ's nerves here. AJ will just lick off their head top.
Kicked
Why
off.
would you think AJ's going on Love Island now?
Nat, why do you think AJ?
You think what you want to say?
He doesn't want to say himself, that's why.
No, I just feel like she'd do well on the show.
Fair enough.
Diplomatic.
Okay, next
I'm not giving
question.
it away.
Who is most likely to become CEO?
CEO.
You can't all point at yourselves again. We should have
I'll
had
just
a
put myself.
For me, it was
Ooh.
Munya/Musti.
Why?
Munya is just business-minded, very hard-working, diligent, which is why I was like, Munya, because he's already in that space in terms of risking what he does. But I also was going to say Musti because Musti also he's great in terms of managing relations. And to be a CEO, you need to have great stakeholder management. And Musti definitely has that. So for me, it was them two.
So why
not
not
to say
Nat,
it's
though?
not going to
Not
be
Nat,
me.
though.
No, you're still that guy. Come on,
I
obviously.
take it
Munya.
personally as
You're
come.
my guy.
Nat,
now.
why you? Why you?
Munya's put in the chat and said, I already am. So,
Yeah, see?
Wow. That's why.
That's
That's
why
actually
I
why I
said
didn't put
Munya.
Munya's name. But to be fair to everyone here, I think everyone here is capable of being a CEO.
sure.
Like all jokes and banter aside, yeah, you have to back yourself. But genuinely speaking, the qualities I've seen in these amazing individuals, everyone's capable. And Munya's already a CEO, so
Yeah.
where do we
Well,
go
I think
from here?
to add to that, like if you look at anyone that runs for a SAB, like they have a self-belief, a level
Yeah.
of self-belief that like is unrivaled, unmatched. So I'm not surprised that we all pick ourselves
Yeah.
because as Muslims we all pick ourselves. So yeah, it's
Who
exciting.
would be most likely to sleep through a fire alarm?
Sleep for a fire alarm.
Sorry.
Hey, that's me, boy.
So say that again. I can't hear you.
Who
Who's-
would be, yeah.
I wasn't
Who's
sure.
most likely to sleep for a fire alarm? It's me or
To
Munya. I'm
sleep
not gonna
with
lie
fire
to you.
alarm.
To be honest, I don't know. I'm only saying you because you said it. So
I'm
I
gonna
feel
say
like
myself. I've lived with Munya as well. It could be
Munya,
Munya
how
too.
have you said Nat?
Musti, he was always late for meetings.
right,
Oh.
fair.
that wasn't for the money.
Ah.
I said Nat.
Why did you say Nat?
Because sometimes Nat just works really hard. And I think he's just like, I
CEO
was knackered. Like, even when we're working in subs and I call Nat, I'm like, this guy definitely just woke up. Like, you can hear the
He's like,
bass in his voice. Like, yeah. So that's why I was like, Nat, because he works so hard.
Probably
he
after
just,
a Rubik's night.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying.
Not gonna
What
lie.
card was it?
9 times out of 10, you ring my phone and I don't pick up. I'm sleeping.
Nat, Nat had this, what was your motto? Work hard, play. No, wait, what was it?
Workers party as well.
Nah, I like Jade's motto. Sleep when you're dead.
Yeah, that's now.
Yeah, that's on the
the
wall.
wall.
Yes,
I wanted
Neon.
my motto on that instead, but Jade went.
Nah. So who's most likely to replace sugar with salt when baking? Basically, essentially someone who doesn't pay attention.
Just find this guy ASAP. I already know who it is. You know, he knows himself.
Munya, who you picking?
Musti can't cook.
Listen, Muns, if you're the thing, Munya would do it on purpose. That's why I picked.
Yeah,
Like Munya would do it
I'll do it on
because
purpose.
it's bants. He'll be like, "I Musti, use this. Like it's good for you, yeah." And I'll put it in, and the thing will start tasting salty. And I know that because he did it to me for Secret Santa.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, no, don't chat to me. Yeah, it has to be Munya.
I said you.
Me, it's not possible. I'm not that
And
mean.
I think you do it with confidence as well. Like,
Nah.
you know when you cook and you make a mistake, it's like, oh, damn. And Musti be like, I did that on purpose. No. Like, flavors, innit? Flavors.
Munya said, "Thank you, AJ."
Musti would never do that.
Which of the four of you do you think would be most likely to get asked for ID?
Oh,
ID.
Babyface.
Yeah, man.
It has to be, man.
People are like, oh, 18. It's like, bro, I'm closer to 30 at this point.
It's okay though. Take it as a compliment.
It's fine. Baby girl for life.
For life, for life.
Love that. So who's most likely to die first in a zombie apocalypse?
Just keep my answer. Cause it ain't me.
You guys
I'm keeping you, boy. I'll push
Munya,
you.
who
I'm not
picking?
gonna lie. I'll
Munya,
push
who
you
you
forward.
picking?
sexism.
Wait, how
Munya, who you picking?
Who you picking, Muns?
You can say
I
it.
said Musti. Nigerian confidence will be his downfall. He'll think, listen, zombies, you can't touch me. Yam, yam, yam. Shut up.
Hey, low key, it's not wrong. He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Which of the four of you do you think is most likely to break a world record?
Break a world record.
And you can say what they
What world
they'd
record
break.
it would?
You know what, yeah? I don't like being nice to Munya, but I'm going to pick Munya because I feel like the world record he will break will be the most number of events simultaneously taking place in one day across different time zones. I feel like you would try that just to say that you have the world record.
For what?
Have it, the person with running the most events simultaneously across different time zones internationally.
No,
I
love
feel
that,
like he
love
would
that.
try it just because nobody else has.
Well, now he's gonna, because he's
Now
just
he's
gonna have
gonna.
to.
Yeah.
Wow,
Definitely.
you know.
AJ, why yourself?
I think I back myself. I think I like to be a pioneer and put myself in different spaces, which is why I think, I don't know what it would be, but I think I've done it as VP Voice, as the first black female president. So I think I tried to be in spaces. So I think, yeah, myself.
Munya said AJ for PM.
Come
Do
on.
you see that? Do you see that?
It'd
AJ
be
for
hard work,
PM.
though, I can't lie there, but yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. If you need a
Not why
campaign
Munya.
consultant.
I was thinking of events and festivals as well. Maybe something, I don't know, widest variety in the most countries or something like that. I like what you said about like having events running at the same time simultaneously.
He's just gonna have to do it now.
Yeah, you have to.
I know.
Yeah.
Now that I've said it, you probably will go and look at the world
Go
record and
now,
see
we
who can
see
beat
his
that.
Google history. How to break a
Definitely.
world record.
All right, guys. Thanks for playing the game. Last
you.
question.
Yes.
So, why is Black History Month important to the union and and the university? Sorry.
It's important because it shows that, one, there is a space for black students at Surrey to be unapologetically black. Two, it shows that they care about the issues. They care about the fact that a black student's issues is going to be different to a non-black student's issues. And hopefully they care about the fact that, a black female student issue will probably be different to a black male student issue. There's a lot of nuances there. So having an event like this really just show that, at least there is a space where you can exist and be yourself unapologetically.
I feel like Black History Month is important to not just the union but everywhere, because black people have contributed to so many things and we don't always get the credit. Like traffic lights, it was black inventor. There's so many different things that black people have done that we don't necessarily get the credit for. And I think Black History Month is also an opportunity for us to celebrate black history, black culture, but also to remember that black history isn't just black history, it also is a part of white history, it's also part of other people's history.
Facts.
And they 100% need to learn to acknowledge that. And also black history is a celebration, it's a time for us to somewhat be introspective. I'm a black woman. This might be a period for me to think, what have other black women done to contribute to me being where I am? What has other figures done and sacrificed so that we can live here in society and be as comfortable as we are? And it's also a chance to embolden yourself, see what spaces you want to do, how you can support the black community. And having said that, it's also important to ensure that Black History Month isn't just about black struggle. It's also about celebrating black culture, and I think that's why Black History Month is important, not just to the union, but to society as a whole. Black people are very innovative and we constantly work hard and pioneer.
I couldn't have said it better than Musty and AJ. I think it's representation, community, and celebrating everything that we've contributed, not just in Britain or America, but globally, and recognizing the history. And the point about introspection as well, I always see it as a point to be especially proud of everything my parents have done and my family have done. I'm proud to be from Sierra Leone, and so it's just a celebration. It's important to have it at Surrey and elsewhere.
Munya, you can speak. Is he typing?
I've got nothing else to add. They were so eloquent and succinct. They explained it beautifully.
All right, so we're gonna open the floor to Q&A. So who's got a Q&A? Oh yeah, a Q for the panel.
Questions.
Thank you, everybody. It was really nice what you guys said, and I feel like everyone really touched on this, you're setting the scene for other black people. You had to speak to some black person on the committee before you, and that's what made you get into that position, and you hope to inspire other people. And even though that is obviously an amazing thing that we're doing for our community, I just want to know, obviously, how you guys kind of balanced doing it for yourself and then doing it for black people. Because, for example, Diana and Joe, obviously, when you guys were speaking, you said first you were Diana, first you were Joe, and then your race. But obviously with black people, it's you're black, and then you're AJ, for example.
Yeah.
So it's how did you remember in those difficult times that you were doing it for yourself?
I think it's hard, definitely, to strike a balance between the two. I think there were certain periods where I didn't always put myself first, if I'm going to be entirely honest. So, for example, when the Black Lives Matter thing happened, I struggled, but I also had to be the face. I had to send email to students. I had to do the forum. I had to be accessible to students to speak to me about their own experience. So it's definitely challenging. But one thing I always tell other people that run for position is that before you were a SAB, you were yourself. And I think you need to make it evident, whether it's your personality in terms of how you do things. And I think it's really important to understand that, yes, I'm black, but I'm AJ. I'm very charismatic. I'm very playful. And it's about bringing my authentic self to these meetings, bringing my authentic self and my experiences to events and so forth. So I think it's really important to strike a balance. But I think sometimes as sabbs, you sometimes just have the identity of a sab. I always tell myself I was AJ before anything else.
Anyone else?
Say that again.
Nothing. We're just finding another question. 1 second.
So it's kind of a two-part question. How would you like people to be allies to you that are non-black people? And then how is it that people try to be allies but they fail to do so?
It's a very,
That's
very
a good question.
interesting
It's
and
the
very
last
deep
part as
question.
well.
I
Yeah.
think in terms of how to be allies, I think it's difficult for me to speak for the whole black community because everybody is going to want allyship in a different way. I think it's more so just the biggest thing I'd say is understanding when you're in a space to learn and in a space to listen. Because some people go to a space to learn and listen, but they have all these ideas of how you can change your circumstance. With all due respect, you're not living it. So by you coming up with all these ideas, are you telling me I've not thought of them? Because what you're telling me is I wasn't intelligent enough to think of these ideas, because a lot of the ideas people come from, and I know they're doing it out of a helpful place. They're not doing it out of a spiteful place, but it can be more damaging because you're saying something so simple. Do you think me that stupid to not have thought of the same simple issue? Do you get what I'm saying? So allies, it's best to understand when you're in a space to learn. I know I'm not from the LGBT plus community, for example. So if I'm in that community or I'm learning from it, I also know I'm not a woman and I don't necessarily suffer from any disability. So if I'm in those spaces, I'm not there to speak. I'm there to listen and to understand and ask the question that you've just asked yourself, right? And I think the second part of your question is how do people fail in being an ally? How do people stop failing at being an ally, would you say? Being open to learning and listening. That's it. And being open to challenging issues. So for example, right, one of the biggest things I can say from the black community in terms of like someone failing in being an ally is being in a room where you could speak up and you didn't, right? There's one thing to say that, I'm not racist. Everyone can say I'm not. To be honest, everybody's going to say I'm not racist. No one's going to, well, then again, there's some areas in Kent, you know what I mean? And I'm racist and I'm proud. No, sorry. No, they're going to be, you're not going to go into a room and be like, you're not going to say I'm not racist, right? But there's a difference in saying I'm not racist versus saying, actually, this is wrong. And being an ally means that whether or not you are going to be positively or negatively impacted, when you see the injustice, you speak up on it, even when there's no one else in the room. That for me has to be the most important place where people fail. People will be like, right, well, I haven't said anything racist. It's not enough for you to not say anything racist if you allow your friends to say racist things around you. If you have friends that they know that they can say something racist in your presence, just because you haven't said it doesn't make you an ally. Yeah. Being an ally is saying, actually, you can't say that. And if you're going to continue saying that, we can't be friends because I'm not going to be in the same environment as you if you're going to say that. And actually saying, I will actually report you to someone and actually have you removed from this university. I don't accept that. That's what being an ally looks like, in my perspective. Other people may have a different opinion, but I would say that's where a lot of people fail.
I'd say to add on to that, where people fail, in my opinion, is sometimes, I call it oppression Olympics. I've said my experience as a black woman or my experience as a black person. You're now telling me, oh, as a disabled person, I understand you have your struggle, but sometimes there's a time and space for this. Yeah. You have your own experience, which I completely understand. But if I'm speaking on my experience, don't try to one-up me. Don't try to patronize me and say sometimes when things happen, I know this is definitely a microaggression. It's because I'm black. But it's like, oh, but they didn't mean it that way. It's not always about race. I've lived my whole life as a black person, and most of the time things happen through the lens of race. I think people don't always understand that. And whilst it's not done from a malicious place, I think that's sometimes where people fail to be a proper ally. And I think it's also, to be an ally, sometimes it sounds really dumb, but sometimes racial matters to some people is a lot more better received when it doesn't actually come from someone from that community. 100%. So if I say racism is this, as a black person, I've experienced this, people might be like, oh, AJ's black, of course she's going to talk about this, that's all she talks about. But for some people, a white person speaking about this, because of their friend's experience or something they've seen, other people tend to be more receptive to it. It's because, like, oh, I didn't expect you to say this. And if you're saying it, then it's definitely a problem because you're not part of that community. And I think I've seen good allyship in terms of sometimes people that aren't part of the community, but they're my friend, and I'll see them champion certain issues. And they don't have to, but they're doing it because they understand that it's a problem. And I think that's an example of good allyship. But I've also seen bad allyship in terms of when you do call things out, there's like white fragility, and some people take things so personal, or people, like I've been in a meeting where someone might have agreed with what I've said, and then after the meeting, they're like, AJ, I definitely agreed with you, like, you were right in that, but in that meeting, why didn't you speak up? Because if you said something, they definitely would have received it a lot better because you're from a different demographic from me, but to tell me you then agree later, there's absolutely nothing for me. And I think it's learning that if you're an ally, you have to be an ally unapologetically, and you have to do it publicly sometimes, which may be uncomfortable for some people, but you have to understand this is how we live all the time, and this is just what you can do to show us some support.
Yeah, I think what I would call that is recognizing your privilege. Like recognizing the privilege you have in a space to speak. If you know the message is going to be received better from you, use your power to deliver that message. So, yeah, that's it. You know, a lot of spaces, you know, being a white male carries a lot of power.
For sure.
Use that. In a lot of spaces, being a white woman carries a lot of power, right? There's a lot of black men, especially in America, that have died at the hands of police because a white woman has picked up the phone and said, I'm being attacked. And the police arrive and they shoot first and ask questions later. If you know that's the case, why then pick up the phone if that's not the case? You're actually using your privilege to someone else's death. And that's not allyship. Using your privilege to help those less advantaged than you, yeah, I'd call that.
Any more?
So then, how would you say growing up not growing up, but doing your education in Surrey was like then? Who would you hang around with? Who would be the people that you could find? Because obviously there are quite a lot of people, ignorant people out there. So they would come and they would say something that could easily offend you, you know, without them even thinking twice about it. So who would you choose to, you know, spend your time with?
I think that's one of the reasons why ACS and work, I know for me, was really important. I think when you come to Surrey, I think there are certain things like, you know, where you're going to get your hair cut, like the food you get are different. And we talked about that a lot in LibCon. But then I think also there's obviously black students in ACS and work, and then there are students that aren't part of their societies. Like I lived with 3 other black guys that weren't involved in ACS and work at all, but I had to hang out with them because we could share similar experiences. And then when you take that and then come into the union, you have a platform when you have the facilities to then, say, okay, what more can we do? What more events and stuff can we do? But I think for me, especially, it was just the societies. There are people I still speak to today that I met at the first ACS session when AJ was president and then when Amelia was president, for example, and I think it just really carries on and continues. And again, that's why we say to all first is just get involved. And obviously you can find other black students out that aren't in ACS or work, but I think predominantly that's where you're going to meet other black people. So I would just say that's why society is important.
I think I'd go off the back of what Nat said in terms of ACS was definitely a great opportunity to meet people who have my shared experiences, to make new friends. And I also then ran for president, obviously. But I think it's also important to remember you don't have to stay in your bubble. Right. I think a lot of black people, not to their detriment, it probably just feels like it's a safe space and it feels like home to hang around with your black friends. But I think once you enter different spaces, you actually see that you have similar interests to other people. I did women's football. I was the only black girl in women's football, but I'm not going to say because I'm the only black person, I'm not going to go, because we share a passion for sports. There's so many different things that you can get involved in, but sometimes I feel like as a community, we tend to be around our own, which isn't a problem, but sometimes you need to learn that the real world of work is not going to be like this. You can be around your ACS mates, you can be around black spaces, but in the real world of work, you might be the only ethnic person. You might not necessarily have the comfort that you have in other spaces, but you need to sometimes learn to challenge your own perceptions and your own narrative and enter certain spaces you wouldn't typically do it in. And I think especially at university, this is the last time you're really going to be around everyone that's a similar age to you, because in the real world of work, you're with a 50-year-old, you're with a 60-year-old, and you won't necessarily have the opportunity to try as many new things as you could. So I think definitely still be in spaces where there's black people so you feel connected, but I say don't limit yourself to just that. If you're a dancer, go to Surrey Dance Squad. If you're this, doing that. And I think just try as many things as you can, because you're a multifaceted individual. You're not just black, you're a black person by identity, but you definitely have different interests, and I think definitely explore that whilst you're at university.
Yeah,
100%.
I think what I want to add to that is, like, you just need to remove all expectations of what your experience should be, and just keep your mind open to everything. Because one of the most limiting factors, in my opinion, at university is that we go there expecting it to be a particular way, and when it doesn't go that way, we get upset or we enter a space of like hurt, depression, whatever it may be. But the reality is, you don't know what your experience is going to be until you're there, so you just have to keep your mind open. Yeah.
Just as like a light question, if you had the opportunity to, would you go back and do another year as a SAB? And if you did, is there anything you would do differently?
Would I go back?
Yeah, so would you do a SAB year again, given the choice? And like, if you would, what role would you take? What would you do differently in that role?
When you say again, do you mean as in the first? Is it a rerun, as in like do an extra year, or are you saying the first time you run?
If you would do it right now, like again.
Again, oh, okay. Nat, do you want to go first?
I would do it again. But I've always wondered what VP activity would be like, though, to be honest. I don't know if that's part of the question, but if they said you can stay for another year, I'd probably want to do VP activity. Nothing wrong with community, of course. But
I wouldn't, you know. I left it all at Surrey. When I look back at my university experience, you know, there are days where you think, oh, man, I remember that time, it was so sick, I'd love to go back. But I know that when I was here, I left it all here. Like, I did everything I could possibly want to do and more, and left my mark. And I'm content with what I've done. I'm content with the legacy that's been left behind. I get the opportunity to come back every year for you guys, ACS. And every time I come back, I love it. I'm like, fantastic. There's an ACS event here. And to be honest, the only reason I go to the after parties is because it's Munya running it. If Munya wasn't running the after party, I probably wouldn't go, because I go to hang out with Munya whilst all you guys are all dancing. I'm with Munya probably helping him sort out the artist that's going to perform, because I'm seeing my friend, right? I've lived the experience. Back then it was what? Azonto. I was the Azonto warrior. I was the king of it. I was the king of the dance floor. Nobody could move to me on the dance. I've done it all. So when I see you lot all doing up your leg work and that, I just think, oh, my children. You know, that's how I see it, because I've lived the experience. So in terms of like coming back to uni, doing the SAB stuff, I left it all here, and I'm happy to see it move on. And also, I'd be irrelevant at this point. I don't live the experience. You can't be a SAB unless you've lived the current experience. So I wouldn't.
Would I do it again? I think if it was a fresh perspective, as in, would I run for a SAB position having not been a SAB? I think I'd definitely do it again. And I don't think I'd change my position, I can't lie, because I think VP voice was perfect. I deliberated VP voice or VP support, I can't lie. But I then went for VP voice because I felt like VP voice is a lot more impactful in terms of the meetings you sit on, the things you can actually champion and change. So in that regard, I definitely would stay in the same position on a done president. But that's why I asked about, do you mean run again? I think if they were to ask me, AJ, would you run for president again? My answer would be a definitive no, because I think I've gained what I've wanted to gain. I've learned what I wanted to learn. And I just wouldn't put myself through that experience for whether the good reason or negative reason. It's just not an experience I personally would want to relive.
You've given what you can. You've given everything. There's nothing left to give. I've got nothing left.
Can you do it?
Yeah, Munya's just dropped off the call because he's not feeling too well, bless him.
Yeah, so Munya's gone. But
I don't, to answer for Munya, and Munya can correct me, no, because I know, like, Munya's my boy, so I don't think he would. he's done his time. He did everything he could, and his impact is still here. The lettings agency, Munya did that. The night bus, Munya did that, right? And he still runs Frisky for everyone every year. So what more is he coming back to do, you know? There needs to be fresh talent. There needs to be fresh activity, and there needs to be fresh eyes. And fresh eyes is everyone sitting in this room, everyone watching online. You guys are the next generation of what can shape what this place will be, you know? So we've had our time, and we've given it all.
On that note, thank you so much, all four of you, even though Munya's not here. Can we have a round of applause?
Thanks for having us, and
Thank you for
thank
having
you
us.
to
You've
Diana
been
and
absolutely
Joe for
inspirational.
organising. Well done
like
to
to-
them as well. Let's give them a round of applause.
Yeah. Diana and Joe.
No, definitely.
Fantastic.
Like, even though I'm not.
And crew. And
Oh
crew.
yeah,
And crew. Oh, you never
You've
ever
seen us
forget
through
crew.
forever.
Never forget crew and
Stag
Stag
TV
TV.
always.
And
always
ACS.
champions. Yeah, and ACS for collaborating with us.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I'd just like to take this moment to just thank you guys, because honestly, even though I'm not black, okay, you guys have honestly paved the way for minorities, and I would love, and I would like, as represented of my community, we thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank
Right, where's the after party at? Let's get
And you
it.
did-
Hey.